The new nurse froze when she saw her childhood photo in the hospital director's office. The morning air bit cold against Valerie Morgan's face as she stood outside St. Raphael Hospital, staring up at the 6-story brick building that would become her new workplace. March 4th had arrived with that particular Chicago chill that made you question every life decision that brought you to the Midwest. She'd driven 3 hours from Milwaukee the night before, her beat-up Honda Civic packed with everything she owned, which wasn't much, 28 years of life, and it all fit in the back of a 12-year-old sedan that should have bothered her more than it did. Valerie pulled her coat tighter and pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee, a combination she'd grown familiar with during nursing school. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting that particular shade of institutional white that made everything look slightly unreal. A tired-looking security guard glanced up from his newspaper, gave her a brief nod, and went back to reading. She checked in at the front desk, where a woman with reading glasses on a beaded chain processed her paperwork with the enthusiasm of someone doing their 10,000th ID badge. 3rd floor, administrative offices. Dr. Whitaker's expecting you at 9. Valerie glanced at the clock on the wall. 8:53. The elevator lurched upward with a mechanical groan that didn't inspire confidence. She caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Minimal makeup. Navy blue scrubs that still had the crease from the package. She looked like what she was, a brand new nurse trying to convince herself she belonged here. The orphanage hadn't prepared her for much, but it had taught her how to fake confidence when you had none. The 3rd floor was quieter than the lobby, carpeted in that industrial gray that deadened sound. Valerie followed the signs to the administrative wing, her sneakers squeaking slightly with each step. Framed photos lined the walls, hospital milestones, groundbreaking ceremonies, charity events, smiling doctors in white coats, grateful patients, the kind of staged happiness that looked good in annual reports. She found Dr. Whitaker's office at the end of the hall. The nameplate on the door read, Dr. Stephen Whitaker, Director. Valerie knocked twice. Come in. The voice was deep, slightly rough, the kind that carried authority without trying. She opened the door and stepped into an office that smelled faintly of old books and lavender. The scent hit her like a physical force, triggering something deep in her memory, something she couldn't quite grasp but felt nonetheless. Her stomach twisted. Dr. Stephen Whitaker sat behind a mahogany desk cluttered with manila folders and medical journals. He was in his early 50s, she guessed, with steel gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a white coat over a pressed shirt and tie, the uniform of someone who'd spent decades in hospitals. Ms. Morgan, he said, not quite smiling, but not unfriendly either. Welcome to St. Raphael, please. Sit down. Valerie moved toward one of the leather chairs across from his desk, but something caught her eye, something that made her freeze mid-step. On the corner of his desk, in an ornate silver frame, was a photograph. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, wearing a white lace dress, brown hair in soft waves around her face, dark eyes looking straight at the camera with that particular mix of shyness and curiosity that children have. And in her small hands, she held a sunflower, bright yellow petals against the white of her dress. The world tilted. Valerie knew that face. She knew it because she'd seen it in mirrors, in old school photos from the orphanage, in the face she'd drawn in art therapy when the social workers asked her to sketch herself as a child. That little girl was her. Mrs. Morgan, Dr. Whitaker's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? She couldn't answer, couldn't look away from the photograph. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. That picture, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. That little girl. Dr. Whitaker followed her gaze to the photograph. His entire body went rigid, the color drained from his face so quickly Valerie thought he might pass out. What about it? His voice had changed completely. Sharp now, almost hostile. I look like her. That could be me. For a moment, neither of them moved. The office was so quiet Valerie could hear the clock on the wall ticking, could hear her own shallow breathing, could hear the way Dr. Whitaker's breath caught in his throat. He stood up slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles went white. When he looked at her, there was something in his eyes that Valerie couldn't name, something raw and painful and terrifying. Get out, Valerie blinked. "What? Get out of my office." His voice shook. "Now, Dr. Whitaker, I don't understand." "I said get out." The force of his words hit her like a slap. Valerie stumbled backward, her hand finding the doorknob behind her. Dr. Whitaker had turned away, his shoulders heaving like he couldn't get enough air. She wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain that she didn't mean to upset him, but the words wouldn't come, so she did the only thing she could. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Valerie stood in the empty hallway, her whole body trembling. What the hell just happened? Around her, the hospital continued its normal rhythm. Somewhere a phone rang. A nurse walked by carrying a chart, gave Valerie a curious glance but kept moving. The fluorescent lights hummed their monotonous tune, but Valerie couldn't move. She leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath, trying to make sense of what just happened. That photograph, that little girl. She'd grown up in St. Mary's Orphanage in Milwaukee, dropped off when she was 6 years old, with no memory of how she got there. The social workers told her she'd been found wandering alone, unable to tell them her name or where she came from. They'd called her Valerie Morgan. Morgan because that was the street where she'd been found. Valerie because the nurse who'd stayed with her that first night said she looked like a Valerie. For 22 years, she'd had no past, no family, no history beyond that orphanage's gray walls, but she'd always had fragments, dreams that felt like memories. The smell of lavender, a voice calling her my little star, strong arms holding her, and sunflowers. She'd always loved sunflowers without knowing why. Valerie pushed off from the wall and walked back toward the elevator on shaky legs. Her orientation was clearly over. Maybe her entire job was over. But as the elevator descended, as the hospital blurred past through the small window in the doors, one thought kept circling through her mind. That little girl in the photograph was her. She knew it the way you know your own heartbeat, your own breath. She knew it in a place deeper than memory. And Dr. Stephen Whitaker knew something about it. Something that had broken through his professional composure like a hammer through glass. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Valerie stepped out into the fluorescent light and made herself a promise. She was going to find out the truth, no matter what it took. She just had no idea how much that truth would cost. 3 weeks crawled by like wounded animals. Valerie kept her head down, did her job, and avoided the third floor entirely. Dr. Whitaker never called her back to his office, never explained, never apologized. It was like that morning had been erased from hospital record, filed away under things we don't talk about. But Valerie couldn't forget. The photograph haunted her. That little girl with the sunflower, frozen in time, smiling at a camera held by someone who'd loved her. Every time Valerie closed her eyes, she saw that image superimposed over her own fractured memories. She'd tried researching online, typing Stephen Whitaker and missing child into search engines during her lunch breaks. Nothing came up. Either it had happened too long ago to leave a digital footprint, or someone had scrubbed the internet clean. The other nurses had been friendly enough. They showed her the ropes, taught her the shortcuts, warned her which doctors were pleasant and which ones would chew you out for breathing wrong. Nobody mentioned Dr. Whitaker's reaction to her. Either they didn't know, or they were too professional to gossip about the boss. On the 22nd day, a Thursday, Valerie got assigned to basement duty. "Someone's got to organize the old files," said Patricia, the head nurse, handing her a key card. "Medical records from before we went digital. They're moving them to off-site storage next month. But they need to be cataloged first." "Sorry, kid," drew the short straw. Valerie didn't mind. Basement work meant solitude, and solitude meant time to think. The elevator groaned its way down past the lobby, past the ground floor, into the bowels of the building where patients never went. The doors opened onto a concrete hallway lit by bare bulbs, pipes running along the ceiling like metal veins. The air smelled like dust and old paper, and something vaguely medicinal that had seeped into the walls over decades. The file room was at the end of the hall. Behind a heavy door that squeaked on its hinges, Valerie flipped the light switch. Fluorescent tubes flickered to life, revealing rows of industrial shelving packed with bankers' boxes and filing cabinets. Decades of medical history, slowly yellowing in the dark. She'd been given a list of what needed cataloging. mostly records from the 90s that hadn't been important enough to digitize but were too old to throw away. Insurance claims, employee files, incident reports, the bureaucratic detritus of a functioning hospital. Valerie pulled on latex gloves and got to work. The first few boxes were exactly as boring as expected. She sorted them by year, made notes on her clipboard, tried not to sneeze from the dust. An hour passed, then 2. She was reaching for another box when her hand brushed against something that had fallen behind the shelf. A manila folder. Bent and forgotten. Valerie pulled it free. The folder was old, the edges soft with age. The tab written in faded blue ink. Valerie Whitaker, 1997, case closed. Her heart stopped. For a moment, she just stared at those words, her brain refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. Then, with trembling hands, she opened the folder. Newspaper clippings spilled out, yellow and brittle. The first one was from the Springfield Herald, dated August 15, 1997. Local girl missing, feared abducted. Below the headline was a photograph, the same photograph from Dr. Whitaker's desk, the same little girl with the sunflower. But here there was a caption, Valerie Whitaker, age 5, disappeared from Springfield Park on August 12th. Police are treating this as a suspected kidnapping. Valerie's hands shook so badly the paper rattled. She set it down on a nearby box and forced herself to read, Valerie Whitaker, daughter of Dr. Stephen Whitaker and his wife Mary Ann, vanished Tuesday afternoon while playing at Springfield Park. According to witnesses, the child was playing near the fountain when she disappeared. An extensive search of the area has yielded no clues. Dr. Whitaker, director of St. Raphael Hospital in Chicago, is offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to his daughter's safe return. There were more clippings, dozens of them. Search for missing girl continues into second week, no new leads in Whitaker case 1 month later. Family still hopes for miracle. Valerie read them all, each one a knife twisting deeper. The articles detailed search parties, FBI involvement, false leads that went nowhere. They showed photos of Dr. Whitaker looking 20 years younger, his face hollowed out by grief. And there were photos of a woman, beautiful, dark-haired, her eyes already haunted by loss. Mary Ann Whitaker, mother of the missing child, made an emotional plea to the public today. Valerie kept digging through the folder. There were police reports, heavily redacted witness statements that said nothing useful, a psychologist's evaluation discussing parental trauma and complicated grief. And then, near the bottom, a death certificate. Mary Ann Elizabeth Whitaker, died, March 7, 1999. Cause: cardiac arrest secondary to complications from depression. She died of a broken heart. 2 years of searching for her daughter had literally killed her. Valerie's vision blurred. Tears splashed onto the yellowed paper, smudging the ink. She wiped at her face with the back of her gloved hand. But more tears came. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be. But the dates lined up. She'd been found wandering the streets of Milwaukee in late August 1997, just weeks after Valerie Whitaker disappeared from Springfield. She'd been 6 years old, or close to it. She'd had no memory of her past, no identification, no way to tell anyone who she was. What if she hadn't been abandoned? What if she'd been taken? Valerie's mind raced through possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. Kidnapped by someone who'd driven her 3 hours north and then, what? Abandoned her when she became too difficult, too recognizable. The social workers had said she'd been found dirty, hungry, confused, like she'd been wandering for days. She looked at the photograph again, really looked at it. The little girl had her eyes, her nose, the same slightly crooked smile, even the way she held herself, shoulders slightly hunched, like she was trying to take up less space, was familiar. That little girl was her. Dr. Stephen Whitaker was her father. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Valerie doubled over, gasping for air. Her father, she had a father, had always had a father who'd searched for her, who'd never stopped looking, who'd kept her photograph on his desk for 28 years. And she'd walked into his office 3 weeks ago like a ghost returning from the dead. No wonder he'd reacted that way. No wonder he'd thrown her out. She must have looked exactly like the daughter he'd lost. The daughter he'd buried emotionally, if not physically. Seeing her must have torn open wounds that had never properly healed. Valerie sat there on the concrete floor of the basement, surrounded by decades of forgotten files, holding proof of a life she'd never known existed. She had a name, a real name, not Valerie Morgan, the orphan nobody wanted, Valerie Whitaker. Someone's daughter, someone's little star. The memories that had haunted her for years suddenly made sense. The lavender, that was her mother's perfume. The voice calling her special names, that was her father. The warm arms holding her, those were real. They'd been real all along. She wasn't nobody. She'd never been nobody. She'd been stolen. Valerie carefully gathered all the papers back into the folder, her hands steadier now. She knew what she had to do. It terrified her, but she had to do it anyway. She had to show this to Dr. Whitaker, to Stephen, to her father. She had to tell him that his daughter, his Valerie, had been found. Valerie didn't go home that night. She sat in her car in the hospital parking lot until the sky turned from blue to purple to black. The folder clutched against her chest like a shield. Her shift had ended at 6. It was almost 9 now. The March wind rattled the Honda's windows, but she barely noticed the cold. She'd memorized every word in those newspaper clippings, every date, every detail. The more she read, the more certain she became. But certainty and courage were two different things. What if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was some kind of con artist, playing on an old man's grief for money or attention? The folder proved a girl had gone missing, but it didn't prove that girl was her. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. She needed to see him, to talk to him, but not at the hospital, where anyone could interrupt, where he could hide behind his professional mask. Valerie pulled out her phone and opened the hospital directory. Dr. Stephen Whitaker, director. There was a work email, a work phone, and, she scrolled down, a home address, listed for emergency contact purposes, 2847 Birchwood Lane, Evanston. She plugged it into her GPS before she could change her mind. The drive took 40 minutes. Valerie's hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. She rehearsed what she'd say 100 different ways, and none of them sounded right. Hi, I think I'm your dead daughter. No, I found something you need to see. Maybe. Please don't call the cops. Definitely not. Birchwood Lane was in one of those older suburbs where the houses had character and the trees were old enough to form canopies over the streets. Number 2847 was a 2-story craftsman with a wide front porch and flower beds that looked well-tended even in early March. Lights glowed warm in the downstairs windows. Valerie parked across the street and sat there for another 10 minutes, watching. Through the sheer curtains, she could see movement, a figure passing by the window. Him. You have to do this. You have to know. She grabbed the folder and got out of the car before fear could stop her. The porch steps creaked under her feet. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What if he slammed the door in her face? What if he called security? What if... The door opened. Dr. Whitaker stood there in jeans and a flannel shirt, looking nothing like the stern hospital director she'd met 3 weeks ago. He looked tired, human, and when he saw her, his entire body tensed. Mrs. Morgan. His voice was carefully neutral. What are you doing at my home? I need to talk to you, please. It's important. This is highly inappropriate. I found something. She held up the folder. In the hospital basement. I think you need to see it. His eyes dropped to the folder. Even in the porch light, she could see the color drain from his face. Where did you get that? His voice had gone hoarse. Can I come in, please? For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he stepped aside. The house smelled like coffee and old wood, and that same lavender scent from his office. The living room was neat but lived in. Bookshelves crammed with medical texts and novels, a leather couch with a blanket thrown over one arm, a coffee table with today's newspaper folded neatly beside a half-empty mug. On the mantel above the fireplace were more photographs. Valerie's eyes went to them automatically. A wedding photo. Dr. Whitaker younger, smiling, his arm around a beautiful dark-haired woman in white, the same woman from the newspaper clippings, Mary Ann. And next to it, in a larger frame, was another photo of the little girl with the sunflower. "Sit down," Dr. Whitaker said. It wasn't quite an invitation. Valerie sat on the edge of the couch. He remained standing, arms crossed over his chest like a barrier. "Show me." She handed him the folder, watched his face as he opened it. watched the way his jaw clenched when he saw the newspaper clippings, the way his hands started to shake when he read the headlines. He flipped through the pages slowly, methodically, like he was performing surgery. When he reached the death certificate, he stopped, just stood there, staring at his wife's name. "Where did you find this?" he asked again, softer this time. Behind some shelves in the basement file room, it had fallen, been forgotten. He closed the folder carefully and set it on the coffee table. Then he walked to the fireplace and stood there with his back to her, staring at the photographs. "Why did you bring this to me?" "Because I think," Valerie's voice cracked. She swallowed hard and tried again. "I think I'm her. I think I'm your daughter." The silence that followed was so complete. Valerie could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Dr. Whitaker didn't turn around. "You think you're Valerie? I know it sounds crazy. Do you have any idea how many people have come to me over the years?" His voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. "How many women showed up claiming to be my daughter? Showed up with stories and theories and just enough physical resemblance to make me hope. I'm not trying to scam you. They all said that too." He finally turned to face her. His eyes were red-rimmed. "And every single time, I let myself believe. Just a little. Just enough to make it destroy me when the DNA tests came back negative, when the stories fell apart, when they turned out to be con artists or delusional or just desperate for a family that wasn't theirs. Then test me," Valerie said. "Do the DNA test. I'll pay for it myself if I have to." "Why?" The word came out like a gunshot. "Why would you do this? What could you possibly gain?" "The truth." Valerie stood up, tears streaming down her face. "I grew up in an orphanage in Milwaukee. St. Mary's. I was found wandering alone in late August 1997, just weeks after your daughter disappeared. I was 6 years old. I couldn't tell anyone my name or where I came from. I had no memories. Nothing." Dr. Whitaker's expression shifted slightly. Something flickered behind his eyes. "The social workers called me Valerie Morgan," she continued. "Morgan because that was the street where I was found. But they chose Valerie because," she laughed bitterly, "because the nurse said I looked like a Valerie. Don't you think that's strange? That someone would randomly give me the same name your daughter had? Coincidence? Maybe, or maybe I told them. Maybe I remembered just enough to say my name before I forgot everything else." He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. I searched for years. I searched every lead, every possibility. The FBI investigated orphanages, foster homes, every place a missing child could end up. They found nothing. Did they check Milwaukee?" The question hung in the air. Dr. Whitaker's face changed. "Springfield is 3 hours from Milwaukee. The FBI focused on surrounding areas, immediate radius. 3 hours is nothing in a car." He moved to the couch and sat down heavily, like his legs had stopped working. "I can't do this again. I can't let myself hope again." Valerie knelt in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "Then don't hope. Just test. One DNA test. If it comes back negative, I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. But if there's even a chance that I'm telling the truth, if there's any chance your daughter is alive, don't you owe it to her to find out?" His hands were trembling. "I don't know if I can survive another disappointment. And I don't know if I can survive not knowing who I am." Her voice broke. "I have fragments, memories that feel like dreams. Lavender, someone calling me my little star. Sunflowers. I've always loved sunflowers and I never knew why. And when I saw that photograph in your office, I felt something. I knew something." Dr. Whitaker reached out slowly, almost involuntarily, and touched her face, just the lightest brush of his fingers against her cheek, like he was afraid she might disappear if he pressed too hard. "You have her eyes," he whispered. "God help me. You have Marianne's eyes. Then test me, please." He pulled his hand back and stood up abruptly, wiping at his face. When he turned back to her, his professional mask had returned, but there were cracks in it now. "All right, we'll do the test, but it takes 2 weeks to get results. And until then, we don't speak about this. Not to anyone, do you understand?" Valerie nodded, relief flooding through her. "Yes, thank you. Don't thank me yet." His voice was hollow. "You might not like what we find, Natalie Crawford learned about Valerie Morgan exactly 37 hours after the DNA test was taken. She'd built an empire on information. In her 23 years at St. Raphael Hospital, she'd cultivated a network of people who owed her favors, feared her influence, or simply understood that knowledge was currency, and Natalie always paid well. So when Dr. Whitaker's assistant mentioned, casually, over coffee in the break room, that the director had left early for a personal medical appointment with a young nurse, Natalie's radar pinged when that same nurse's employment file was accessed after hours from Dr. Whitaker's office computer. Natalie noticed, and when the hospital's contracted DNA testing lab logged a rush order under Whitaker's name, Natalie made a phone call. She sat in her corner office on the 4th floor, one floor above Stevens, a positioning she'd fought for, and listened to the lab technician explain what he knew. 2 samples, paternity test, results expedited, 2 weeks instead of the standard 4. Natalie hung up and stared out her window at the Chicago skyline. 23 years. That's how long she'd been building her position here. She'd started as a financial officer back in 1995, when St. Raphael was struggling, and Stephen Whitaker was just another department head with more ideals than business sense. She'd been the one to turn things around, secured the grants, negotiated the insurance contracts, streamlined operations, until the hospital not only survived but thrived. And when tragedy struck Stephen's family in 1997, when he'd fallen apart, she'd been there, holding the pieces together, making the decisions he couldn't make, becoming indispensable. Over the years, that dependence had evolved into power, real power. Stephen might be the director in title, but Natalie controlled the budget, the board relationships, the day-to-day operations. She'd made herself the engine that kept St. Raphael running, and Stephen, broken and grateful, had never questioned it. Until now, Natalie pulled up Valerie Morgan's file on her computer, 28 years old, graduated from Milwaukee School of Nursing. No family listed, grew up in, Natalie's eyes narrowed, St. Mary's Orphanage. She did the math. If Valerie was 28 now, she would have been approximately 6 years old in 1997, the same age as Stephen's missing daughter. Natalie's jaw tightened. She reached for her phone and dialed a number she'd kept in her contacts for situations exactly like this. Marcus, it's Natalie Crawford. I need a background check. Deep one. Everything you can find on a Valerie Morgan, currently employed at St. Raphael Hospital. She spelled out the details, promised double his usual rate for speed, and hung up. Then she made another call, and another. By the time she left the office that evening, she'd set 6 different investigations in motion. Information was power, and Natalie intended to have all of it. The first report came back 3 days later. Marcus met her at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the hospital, sliding a manila envelope across the table. That's everything I could dig up. Not much there, honestly. She's clean. Almost too clean. Natalie opened the envelope and scanned the contents. Birth certificate. Or rather, a certificate of foundling status issued by the state of Wisconsin. Medical records showing she'd been admitted to a hospital in Milwaukee on August 28, 1997, malnourished and dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. Police reports documenting her discovery on Morgan Street, unable to provide any information about herself. And then, nothing. Just the usual orphanage records, school transcripts, employment history, a life built from scratch with no foundation. What about the orphanage? Natalie asked. Anyone still working there from 97? Place closed down in 2019. Most of the records were transferred to the state, but I did find one name that might interest you. Marcus pulled out a sticky note. Margaret Donovan. She was the intake coordinator back then. Retired now. Living in Kenosha. Natalie pocketed the note. Good work. That afternoon, she made the drive to Kenosha. Margaret Donovan lived in a modest ranch house with an overgrown garden and a mailbox that leaned slightly to the left. She answered the door in a floral housecoat, squinting through thick glasses at Natalie's business card. St. Raphael Hospital. I don't have any medical bills with you folks. I'm not here about bills, Miss Donovan. I'm here about a child who came through St. Mary's in 1997. Valerie Morgan. Something flickered across the old woman's face. Recognition. And something else. Unease. That was a long time ago. I know, but it's important. Natalie smiled her most trustworthy smile. There's a legal matter involved. A potential inheritance dispute. I just need to verify some details about her intake process. Margaret hesitated, then stepped aside. I suppose you'd better come in. The living room smelled like cats and old potpourri. Natalie perched on the edge of a floral sofa, while Margaret settled into a recliner that had clearly molded itself to her shape over years of use. What do you remember about Valerie Morgan? Natalie asked. Poor little thing. Found wandering the streets, completely confused. Couldn't tell us her name. Where she lived. Nothing. We kept her for weeks, hoping someone would claim her. But nobody ever did. And you're certain she was brought in on August 28th. 1997. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. That's what the records say. Records can be wrong. Not mine. The defensiveness came quick. Too quick. Natalie leaned forward. Ms. Donovan, let me be frank. I know the state's record-keeping in the 90s was inconsistent. Budget cuts, staff shortages, things falling through the cracks. If there were any irregularities with Valerie Morgan's intake, any paperwork that wasn't quite by the book, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to make it worth your while to remember correctly. Margaret's face had gone pale. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that a 6-year-old girl disappeared from Springfield on August 12, 1997, and 16 days later, a 6-year-old girl with no memory appeared at your orphanage in Milwaukee. That's quite a coincidence. The silence stretched between them. How much? Margaret finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Natalie opened her purse and pulled out a checkbook. How much did you get paid the first time? Margaret's face crumbled. $5,000? He said the family didn't want her anymore, that they'd pay to make sure she was placed somewhere far away where they'd never have to see her again. Who paid you? I don't know. It was a man, middle-aged. Said he was a lawyer, met me in a parking lot, gave me cash, and the girl told me to backdate the intake forms to make it look like she'd been found on the street. Said if I told anyone, I'd lose my job and face criminal charges for trafficking. And you believed him. I was 63 years old and 3 years from retirement. What was I supposed to do? Margaret was crying now, mascara streaking down her wrinkled cheeks. She was already there, already safe. I figured it was better than whatever situation she'd come from. I gave her a good placement, made sure she was taken care of. You took a bribe to hide a kidnapped child, Natalie said flatly. I didn't know she was kidnapped. Not for certain. And after a while, I convinced myself maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'd gotten the timeline confused in my head. The record said one thing. My memory said another. Eventually, the records won. Natalie wrote a check for $10,000 and slid it across the coffee table. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a statement saying Valerie Morgan's intake paperwork was falsified. You're going to say she arrived at the orphanage in 2001, not 1997. You got the dates confused because of your age and the volume of children you processed over the years. But that's not true. It's true enough. And it's what you're going to say if you want this check, and if you want to avoid me reporting what you just told me to the authorities. Natalie's smile had no warmth in it. You helped hide a kidnapped child, Miss Donovan. That's a felony, even after all these years. Margaret stared at the check, then at Natalie, then back at the check. Her hands shook as she reached for it. What do I have to sign? An hour later, Natalie was back in her car with a notarized statement that would completely destroy Valerie Morgan's credibility. She also had the name of the lawyer who'd paid Margaret off. Or at least, the name he'd given, probably fake. But it was another thread to pull if needed. By the time she got back to Chicago, she'd already planned her next 3 moves. She'd hire a handwriting expert to verify that Valerie's signature on her employment application matched signatures on known fraud cases. She'd have an attorney draft documents showing Valerie had researched Stephen Whitaker extensively before applying to the hospital. She'd manufacture evidence of a pattern, and she'd do it all before those DNA results came back, because Natalie Crawford hadn't spent 23 years building her empire just to watch some orphan girl with a convenient backstory tear it all down. Stephen was vulnerable right now, emotional, that made him dangerous, but it also made him malleable. She just needed to push the right buttons. The threatening messages started on day 8. The first one came as a text from a block number. Stop lying to Dr. Whitaker or you'll regret it. Valerie stared at her phone in the hospital break room, her sandwich forgotten. She showed it to Patricia, the head nurse, who frowned and suggested she report it to security. But report what? An anonymous text with no specific threat. She deleted it and tried to focus on her shift. The second message came 2 days later, slipped under her apartment door. Gold diggers belong in graves. That one she took to the police. The officer who filled out the report looked bored, told her to keep her doors locked and call 911 if anyone actually threatened her in person. As if paper threats didn't count. On day 11, her car was keyed. Someone had scratched liar into the driver's side door in letters 6 inches tall. Valerie stood in the parking garage, staring at the damage, fighting back tears. The repair would cost more than she had in savings. And the message was clear. Someone knew about the DNA test. Someone wanted her gone. She had 4 days until the results came back. 4 days to prove she wasn't crazy, wasn't a con artist, wasn't whatever people thought she was, but she needed more than a DNA test. She needed proof that would satisfy not just science but the human heart, because even if the test came back positive, Stephen would need something tangible to hold on to, something that proved she was his daughter beyond chromosomes and percentages. That night, Valerie drove back to Milwaukee. St. Mary's Orphanage had closed 5 years ago, but the building still stood, a 3-story brick structure with boarded windows and a chain-link fence around the perimeter. A banner announced future development. Coming soon, Riverside Luxury Apartments. Valerie parked across the street and stared at the building where she'd spent 16 years of her life. How many nights had she looked out those third-floor windows, wondering if somewhere out there was a family looking for her? The fence had a gap near the back where the chain link had been cut and poorly repaired. Valerie squeezed through, her jacket catching on the wire. The back door was padlocked, but the window next to it had been broken, probably by teenagers or copper thieves. She pulled out her phone's flashlight and climbed through. The smell hit her first, mildew and rot, and something sweet and terrible underneath. The hallway was barely recognizable, stripped of everything valuable and tagged with graffiti, but the layout was the same. Valerie moved through the darkness like a ghost returning home. The administrative offices were on the first floor. Most of the furniture was gone, but file cabinets still lined one wall, too heavy or too worthless to steal. Valerie pulled on the drawers. Locked. She found a crowbar in what used to be the maintenance closet and pried the first cabinet open. Empty. The second one, too. The third contained water-damaged files from 2015. Useless. The fourth cabinet fought her. The lock was rusted, the drawer swollen from moisture. Valerie leveraged her full weight on the crowbar, and finally, with a shriek of metal, it gave. Inside were boxes, dozens of them. Personal effects of children who'd aged out of the system or been adopted. The things too worthless to forward, too personal to throw away. Cheap jewelry, broken toys, drawings, journals. Valerie started pulling boxes out, reading names. Most she didn't recognize. Kids who'd come after her time or before. But then she found one labeled simply, Morgan, V, 1997-2013. Her hands shook as she opened it. A ratty stuffed elephant she vaguely remembered. School awards for perfect attendance and good behavior. The kind they gave kids to make them feel special. A friendship bracelet made of embroidery floss. The colors faded. Drawings she'd made in art therapy. All of them featuring the same thing. A little girl holding a woman's hand, both of them smiling. She'd drawn her mother over and over, trying to remember a face she couldn't see. And at the bottom, wrapped in a piece of purple velvet that had once been a small pouch, was a gold chain. Valerie lifted it carefully. The chain was delicate, almost too fine for a child, with a small pendant, a sunflower, no bigger than a dime, with tiny details etched into the gold petals. The moment she touched it, memory slammed into her like a fist. Hands, gentle hands with painted nails, fastening the chain around her neck. A voice, soft and musical. This is so you'll always carry sunshine with you, my little star. Even on the darkest days. It's beautiful, Mama. Just like you, baby. Don't ever take it off. Okay, promise me. I promise. Valerie gasped. The memory so vivid it felt like being underwater. She clutched the necklace to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She remembered. Not everything. Not clearly. But she remembered her mother's voice. Her mother's hands. The weight of this chain around her neck. This was the proof she needed. She carefully wrapped the chain back in the velvet and put it in her pocket. Then she put everything else back in the box exactly as she'd found it. Some instinct telling her to preserve this evidence. The drive back to Chicago took forever. Valerie kept touching her pocket, making sure the chain was still there, that she hadn't imagined it. She went straight to Stephen's house. It was nearly midnight, but she couldn't wait. This couldn't wait. His porch light was on. She knocked, and he answered quickly, like maybe he'd been unable to sleep too. "Valerie." He looked worried. "What's wrong?" "I found something." She pulled out the velvet cloth and unwrapped the chain, holding it out to him. "I went back to the orphanage. This was in my box of personal effects. I've had it since I was a child." Stephen stared at the necklace. His face went completely white. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely a whisper. "The orphanage, I just told you." "No." He took the chain from her with trembling hands. "Where did you really get this?" "I don't understand. This necklace." He held it up to the light. "Marianne gave this to Valerie 3 days before she disappeared. She'd had it specially made. The jeweler engraved our initials on the back of the sunflower. See?" He turned the pendant over. Sure enough, in tiny script, M.W. plus W. It was the last present Marianne ever gave her. When Valerie disappeared, she was wearing it. The police documented it. It was on every missing persons flyer we distributed. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. "This is the necklace. There's no way you could have gotten this unless you were there. Unless you were her." "I was," Valerie whispered. "I am." Stephen looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, she saw belief in his eyes. Not hope, not desperation, actual belief. "How did you get it?" he asked. "I don't know. I have a memory, just one. Someone fastening it around my neck, a voice calling me Little Star. But I don't remember what happened after, how I ended up in Milwaukee, why I couldn't remember. Maybe you were traumatized. Children sometimes block out traumatic memories. Or maybe someone made me forget." The words felt heavy. "The orphanage said I was found disoriented, dehydrated. What if whoever took me drugged me, kept me sedated?" Stephen's jaw clenched. "If someone did this deliberately, if someone stole you from us." A knock at the door made them both jump. Stephen opened it, and Natalie Crawford stood on his porch, her expression concerned but her eyes sharp. "Stephen, I'm sorry to come by so late, but we need to talk. It's about Mrs. Morgan." Valerie's stomach dropped. "Natalie, this isn't a good time. I think you'll want to hear this." Natalie held up a folder. "I've been doing some research about Valerie's background, and I'm afraid what I found is troubling." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes going immediately to the gold chain in Stephen's hand. "Is that supposed to be evidence?" She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Stephen, jewelers make thousands of sunflower necklaces. You can buy one just like that at any mall kiosk for $30. This one has initials," Stephen said. "Engraved after the fact, I'm sure." Natalie opened her folder. "Stephen, I have a sworn statement here from Margaret Donovan, the intake coordinator at St. Mary's Orphanage. She says Valerie's paperwork was incorrect, that Valerie actually arrived at the orphanage in 2001, not 1997. "That's not true," Valerie said. "The records clearly say, records that Ms. Donovan now admits were falsified. She was confused, elderly. She mixed up dates." Natalie's voice was smooth, reasonable. "And this necklace, according to the jeweler I contacted." She pulled out another document. "They've sold over 300 identical pieces in the Chicago area alone. Miss Morgan could have purchased one any time." "Why would I do that?" Valerie's voice rose. "What would I gain?" "Money, security, a family." Natalie turned to Stephen. "I also have evidence that Miss Morgan researched you extensively before applying to work here. She knew about your daughter's disappearance. She knew you'd be vulnerable to this exact scenario." "That's insane." "Is it?" Natalie pulled out more papers. Background checks showing she struggled financially her entire adult life, moved from job to job, And suddenly she applies to work at a hospital 3 hours from where she's lived her entire life, right before the 28th anniversary of your daughter's disappearance. Stephen looked at Valerie, and she saw doubt creeping back into his eyes. "Stephen, don't listen to her. I think you should leave," Natalie said to Valerie, her voice cold. "And I think you should stay away from Dr. Whitaker until the DNA results come back, which, if you're so confident in your story, shouldn't be a problem." Valerie looked at Stephen, silently begging him to say something, to defend her, to believe her, but he just stood there, holding the necklace, looking lost. "Stephen," Valerie whispered, "I think," he cleared his throat, "I think maybe you should go until we have the results." "I need time to think." The words hit like a physical blow. Valerie grabbed the necklace from his hand, her necklace, and walked out into the night, leaving the folder of lies on Stephen's coffee table. Behind her, she heard Natalie's voice, soft and persuasive. "I know this is hard, Stephen, but we need to protect you. 3 more days until the DNA results. 3 more days until the truth." If Stephen was still willing to believe it, Valerie didn't go to work the next day, or the day after that. She called in sick, which wasn't entirely a lie. She spent 48 hours in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the gold chain she'd hung from her bedside lamp where it caught the light. The sunflower pendant spun slowly in the air currents from her heating vent, throwing small shadows across the wall. EMW plus GW, Marianne Whitaker and Valerie Whitaker, her mother and her, a connection that transcended memory, transcended doubt. She knew, this necklace was real. The memory of her mother fastening it around her neck was as solid as the floor beneath her feet. But knowing something and proving it were different things entirely. Her phone buzzed constantly, blocked numbers mostly, more threats. "Leave town before you get hurt. We know where you live. Stop lying to a grieving father. You monster. Monster." That one stung the most because part of her wondered if it was true. What if she was wrong? What if her desperate need for family had manufactured memories that didn't exist? What if she'd convinced herself so thoroughly that even she believed the lie? No. She touched the necklace again. This was real. On the 3rd day, she forced herself to shower, to eat something, to return to the world. She had 1 more shift before the DNA results came back. 1 more day to prove she belonged at St. Raphael, not as Stephen Whitaker's possible daughter, but as a nurse who earned her place. The hospital felt different when she walked through the doors, hostile. Eyes tracked her as she moved through the lobby, and conversations stopped when she passed. The rumors had spread. She could see it in the way people looked at her, that mix of curiosity and judgment that made her skin crawl. In the break room, she overheard 2 nurses talking. "Can't believe she has the nerve to show her face. Heard she's done this before. At other hospitals. Dr. Whitaker's been through enough without some gold digger." Valerie grabbed her coffee and left before they noticed her. Her hands shook so badly she spilled half of it on the way to her station. Patricia found her in the supply closet, supposedly counting IV bags, but really just trying to breathe. "Hey," Patricia's voice was gentle. "You okay, kid? Does everyone think I'm a con artist?" Patricia didn't answer right away, which was answer enough. "Look," she finally said, "people are protective of Dr. Whitaker. He's been through hell. And when someone shows up claiming to be his long-lost daughter," she shrugged, "can you blame them for being skeptical? I'm not claiming anything. I'm just trying to find the truth. I believe you." Patricia put a hand on her shoulder. "For what it's worth, I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I can spot a liar at 50 paces. You're not lying." The kindness broke something in Valerie. She pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting tears. "Then why doesn't he believe me?" "Because he's scared. Believing you means hoping again. And hope is dangerous when you've been disappointed as many times as he has. Natalie's turned him against me. Natalie Crawford could convince a fish it's drowning." Patricia's voice turned hard. "That woman's been running this hospital like her personal kingdom for years. Everyone's afraid of her, even the board. Why? Because she knows where all the bodies are buried. Metaphorically speaking, she's got dirt on everyone, and she's not afraid to use it. You threaten her power. You threaten everything she's built. All I want is to know who I am. I know. Kid, but to Natalie, you're not a person. You're a problem that needs solving." Patricia checked her watch. "Your shift starts in 5. You gonna make it?" Valerie wiped her face and nodded. "Yeah, I'll make it." The day crawled by. Every patient interaction felt like a test. Every time she made a decision, she second-guessed herself. By the time her shift ended, she was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. She was gathering her things from her locker when her supervisor appeared. "Ms. Morgan, Dr. Whitaker would like to see you in his office." Valerie's heart stopped. Now! The walk to the 3rd floor felt like a death march. Other staff members watched her pass, their expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction. Someone was about to get fired, and everyone knew it. Dr. Whitaker's door was closed. Valerie knocked. "Come in." He sat behind his desk, and he looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. The photograph of the little girl with the sunflower was face down on his desk. That detail felt ominous. "Sit down, Valerie." She sat, waited. "The DNA results come back tomorrow," he said. His voice was flat, professional, the voice of someone who'd rebuilt his walls. "Natalie thinks I should fire you before then, to protect the hospital from potential liability. Are you going to?" "I should. You've become a distraction. Staff morale is suffering. Patients are asking questions." He rubbed his face. "But I can't. Not until I know for certain. I'm telling you the truth." "Are you?" He looked at her, and his eyes were haunted. "Because I've looked at Natalie's evidence. The statement from the orphanage coordinator, the jeweler's records, the timeline discrepancies, and it all makes sense, Valerie. It makes terrible, logical sense. She's lying. Why would she lie? What does she gain from this? Control over you. Control over this hospital. I'm a threat to that." Stephen shook his head. "That's paranoid conspiracy thinking. Is it? Or is it the truth you don't want to see because you've depended on her for so long?" Valerie leaned forward. "Think about it. Really think. Who benefits from you staying broken? Who benefits from you never moving on, never healing? Natalie has been nothing but supportive. Natalie has been keeping you in place. Like a butterfly pinned to a board. Beautiful. Dead. Displayed." The words hung in the air between them. Stephen's jaw tightened. "You're out of line. Maybe I'm the first person in 28 years willing to say what everyone else is too afraid to say." Valerie stood up. "Tomorrow the DNA results will come back. And when they prove I'm telling the truth, you're going to have to face the fact that someone who had access, who had opportunity, helped hide your daughter for 3 decades. Get out. Someone paid that orphanage coordinator. Someone falsified those records. Someone has spent weeks trying to discredit me, threaten me, drive me away before the truth could come out." Valerie's voice shook. "Ask yourself who had the most to lose if you found your daughter, who had the most to gain from your grief." "I said get out." Valerie left. But as she walked down the hallway, she heard it, the sound of something shattering in Stephen's office. Glass, maybe, or something more fragile. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the physical exertion to calm her racing heart. 3 floors down, then through the lobby, then out into the cold March evening. Her car with its keyed door waited in the parking garage. She sat behind the wheel and let herself cry. Huge, gulping sobs that came from somewhere deep and wounded. Tomorrow the DNA results would arrive, and this nightmare would be over, one way or another. Her phone buzzed. Another message from a blocked number. "Last warning. Leave tonight or face the consequences." Valerie deleted it without responding. She wasn't going anywhere. She drove home through the darkening streets, past houses where families were sitting down to dinner, where people belonged to each other without question. The loneliness was a physical ache in her chest, back in her apartment. She made tea. She didn't drink and stared at the necklace spinning slowly in the lamplight. Her mother's gift. The only proof she had beyond DNA and desperate hope. "Don't ever take it off. Okay? Promise me." "I promise." But she had taken it off, or it had been taken from her. And for 28 years, she'd lived without it, without the sunshine her mother wanted her to carry. Valerie reached up and fastened the chain around her neck. The weight of it felt right, like something returning to its proper place. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow everything would make sense. She just had to survive until then. Outside her window, a car sat parked across the street. its driver watching her apartment with patient, predatory focus. Natalie Crawford had made calls, set contingencies. The DNA results might prove Valerie's biology, but biology wasn't everything. There were other ways to win a war, and Natalie had always been exceptional at winning. The call came at 9:47 a.m. Valerie was in the middle of checking a patient's vitals when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it. Hospital policy was no personal calls during shifts, but it vibrated again and again. "Go ahead and answer it," her patient said, an elderly woman recovering from hip surgery. "Sounds important." Valerie pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from Dr. Whitaker's office. A text. Results arrived. Emergency board meeting called 11 a.m., conference room A. Her hands went numb. "You okay, honey?" The patient was looking at her with concern. "You just went white as a sheet." "I'm fine. I need to..." Valerie couldn't finish the sentence. She finished the vitals check on autopilot, documented everything, and then practically ran to find Patricia. "I need to leave, family emergency." Patricia took one look at her face and nodded. "Go, I'll cover for you." Valerie made it to the bathroom before her legs gave out. She sat in a stall, head between her knees, trying to breathe. This was it, the moment that would define the rest of her life. Either she was Valerie Whitaker, daughter of Stephen and Marianne, stolen at 5 years old and lost for 28 years, or she was Valerie Morgan, an orphan with a vivid imagination and a desperate need to belong, who'd convinced herself of an impossible truth. "Please," she thought, not sure who she was praying to. "Please let me be his daughter. Please let me belong somewhere." She pulled herself together, washed her face, and went to change out of her scrubs. If she was going to face the board of directors, she'd do it looking like someone who deserved to be there. By 10:55, Valerie was standing outside conference room A, trying to ignore the curious stares from staff members who clearly knew something big was happening. The conference room had glass walls, and she could see people already gathering inside. Dr. Whitaker sat at the head of the table, a manila envelope in front of him. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Natalie Crawford sat to his right, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, her expression sympathetic, but her eyes calculating. There were others too. Board members Valerie recognized from hospital newsletters, a man in an expensive suit who was probably a lawyer, and a woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun who radiated administrative authority. At 11,000 exactly, Natalie emerged from the conference room. "Ms. Morgan, please come in." Valerie's legs felt like water, but she made them work. She walked into the conference room, and 15 pairs of eyes tracked her movement. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. "Please sit." Natalie gestured to a chair at the opposite end of the table from Stephen. As far from him as possible, the positioning wasn't accidental. Valerie sat. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Natalie began, standing at the head of the table like she was chairing the meeting instead of Stephen. "As you know, we're here to address a sensitive matter involving Mrs. Valerie Morgan and Dr. Whitaker over the past 2 weeks. Mrs. Morgan has claimed to be Dr. Whitaker's daughter, who disappeared in 1997. A DNA test was performed, and the results arrived this morning." She paused for effect, her gaze sweeping the room. "Before we review those results, I think it's important the board understands the context. Ms. Morgan has presented various pieces of evidence to support her claim. Evidence that, upon investigation, has proven questionable at best." Natalie pulled out her folder, the same one she'd shown Stephen days ago. "We have a sworn statement from the orphanage coordinator stating that Miss Morgan's intake date was falsified. We have jeweler records showing the necklace she presented as unique is actually a mass-produced item. We have background checks showing a pattern of financial instability, and that's enough." Stephen's voice cut through Natalie's presentation like a knife. He hadn't looked up from the envelope in front of him. "Stephen, the board needs to understand." "I said that's enough." He finally raised his head, and his eyes were red-rimmed but focused. "You've made your case, Natalie, multiple times. Now let's see what the science says." He picked up the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. The room fell silent, except for the sound of paper tearing. Valerie watched him pull out a single sheet, watched him read it once, twice. watched his face crumble like paper in a fist. "Stephen?" Natalie's voice had lost some of its confidence. He stood up slowly, holding the paper. When he spoke, his voice broke on every word. "Probability of paternity, 99,997%. He looked at Valerie, tears streaming down his face. "She's my daughter. Valerie is my daughter." The room exploded. Board members started talking over each other. The lawyer demanded to see the results. The woman with the severe bun was asking questions about protocol and verification. Natalie had gone perfectly still, her face a mask, but Valerie couldn't hear any of it. All she could hear was the rushing of blood in her ears, the pounding of her heart, the words echoing in her mind. "She's my daughter. This is impossible." Natalie's voice cut through the chaos. "Those results must be wrong. We need a second test from a different lab. The results are certified by Genetech Labs, one of the most reputable DNA testing facilities in the country." The lawyer had taken the paper from Stephen and was reviewing it. "The chain of custody is documented. There's no question about validity. Then someone tampered with the samples. Ms. Crawford," the board chairwoman, the woman with the severe bun, stood up. "I think we need to have a different conversation now. One about how a child who disappeared in 1997 ended up in an orphanage in Milwaukee with falsified records. I already explained that. The orphanage coordinator made an error. An error that conveniently made it impossible for Dr. Whitaker to find his daughter." The chairwoman's voice was ice. "An error that, according to your own evidence, involved a cash payment." Natalie's composure finally cracked. "I had nothing to do with..." "Didn't you?" Stephen had regained some control. He pulled out his own folder, one Valerie hadn't seen before. "I've spent the last 3 days asking questions, Natalie, calling in favors, hiring investigators." He spread papers across the conference table like dealing cards. "Bank records showing regular transfers from your personal account to Margaret Donovan. The orphanage coordinator, starting in August 1997 and continuing for 5 years. Natalie's face went white. "Email correspondence between you and various private investigators I hired over the years. Emails where you subtly redirected their searches, suggested they were wasting their time, convinced them to close cases. Stephen, let me explain. Internal hospital documents showing that after Marianne died, you systematically consolidated power, making yourself indispensable while I was too grief-stricken to notice." His voice was shaking now. "Not with grief, but with rage. You kept me broken, Natalie, on purpose. Because a broken man was easier to control. That's not... I never..." Natalie looked around the room, searching for support. Found none. "I was protecting you. Those investigators were charlatans. That coordinator was clearly lying for money. I was trying to save you from more heartbreak. You knew." Valerie stood up, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "You knew where I was. You've known for 28 years. I don't know what you're talking about." Margaret Donovan described the man who paid her to take me. "Middle-aged lawyer," she said. "But it wasn't a lawyer, was it? It was whoever you hired, whoever you paid to make me disappear so thoroughly that even the FBI couldn't find me. This is insane. Why would I do that?" "Because Stephen was vulnerable after I disappeared," Valerie said. "His marriage was falling apart from the stress. He was barely functioning, and you saw an opportunity. If I came back, if his family healed, you'd lose your leverage, you'd lose your control. You can't prove any of this." "Actually," the lawyer interjected, "if these bank records are authentic, they establish a pattern of payments that directly correlates with obstruction of a missing persons investigation. That's a federal crime." Natalie stood frozen, her carefully constructed empire crumbling around her. "Someone call security," the chairwoman said. "Ms. Crawford, you're suspended from all duties pending a full investigation. If these allegations are substantiated, we'll be turning everything over to law enforcement." 2 security guards appeared. They must have been waiting outside. Natalie looked at Stephen one last time, and for a moment, Valerie almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I built this hospital," Natalie said, her voice hollow. "While you were falling apart, I kept everything running. I saved this place, and destroyed my family to do it." Stephen's voice was quiet but final. "Get out." They escorted Natalie from the room. Through the glass walls, Valerie watched her walk down the hallway, shoulders straight, head high, even in defeat. A woman who'd built an empire on someone else's grief and was too proud to show remorse even as it collapsed. The conference room had gone quiet. "I think," the chairwoman said gently, "that Dr. Whitaker and his daughter need some privacy. This meeting is adjourned." Board members filed out, some offering congratulations, others too shocked to speak. The lawyer lingered long enough to explain next steps. Police reports, criminal investigations, probably a media circus, and then it was just Valerie and Stephen, sitting at opposite ends of a conference table, separated by 12 feet and 28 years. "I'm sorry," Stephen said. "I doubted you. I let her manipulate me. I should have believed." Valerie crossed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. He froze for a moment, then hugged her back, his whole body shaking with sobs he'd held back for too long. "You're here now," she whispered. "That's all that matters. You're here, and I'm here, and we found each other. My little star," he said, the old endearment breaking on his lips. "I thought I'd lost you forever. I'm home, Dad. I'm finally home." They stood there in the conference room, holding each other, while outside the glass walls, the hospital continued its daily rhythm. Lives beginning and ending, people healing and hurting, the endless cycle of human existence. But in that moment, in that embrace, two lives that had been shattered finally began to heal. The truth had set them free. The police came that afternoon. 2 detectives, a woman named Martinez with kind eyes, and a man named Chen who looked like he'd seen everything, sat in Stephen's office while he laid out the evidence he'd compiled over the past 3 days. Valerie sat beside him, still feeling like she was floating outside her body. Every few minutes, Stephen would reach over and squeeze her hand, like he needed to confirm she was real. She understood. She kept doing the same thing. "So let me get this straight," Detective Martinez said, reviewing the bank statements. Ms. Crawford made regular payments to Margaret Donovan starting in August 1997, just after your daughter disappeared, and these payments continued for 5 years. "Correct," Stephen said. "I pulled my personal financial records as well. Natalie had access to my accounts. She helped me manage my finances after Marianne died. There are several large cash withdrawals during that time period that I don't remember authorizing." "How large?" $10,000, $20,000 once. $50,000, all marked as hospital expenses or consulting fees. But I can't find any corresponding invoices or documentation. Detective Chen made notes. "And you believe Ms. Crawford used this money to pay someone to kidnap your daughter and falsify orphanage records?" "I believe she either did it herself or hired someone to do it." Stephen's voice was steady, but Valerie could see the rage simmering underneath. "Margaret Donovan told Natalie that she was paid by a middle-aged man claiming to be a lawyer. But there's no record of any lawyer being involved in my daughter's disappearance. I think Natalie hired someone to play that role. Miss Donovan is willing to testify. According to my investigator, she's terrified, but she's also elderly and doesn't want to face criminal charges herself. If you offer immunity, she'll talk." Martinez and Chen exchanged glances. "We'll need to verify all of this," Martinez said. "But if it checks out, Ms. Crawford is looking at multiple felonies. Kidnapping, obstruction of justice, fraud, conspiracy." She shook her head. "This is going to be a major case." "I don't care about the case," Stephen said. "I care about understanding what happened to my daughter, why she can't remember being taken, how she ended up in Milwaukee. That's something we'll need Ms. Morgan's help with," Chen said, turning to Valerie. "I know this is difficult, but is there anything you remember from that time? Anything at all?" Valerie closed her eyes, trying to reach back into the fog of her earliest memories. "I remember being in a car for a long time. It was dark. I was scared. There was a man driving, but I can't see his face. And there was a smell. Cigarettes and something sweet, like cherry candy. Were you restrained? Drugged? I don't think I was tied up, but I felt heavy, like I couldn't quite wake up. Everything was fuzzy." She touched the sunflower necklace at her throat. "I remember asking for my mama. The man said she wasn't coming, that I had to forget about her." Stephen's hand tightened on hers. "When we found you," Martinez said gently, "you were wandering near downtown Milwaukee, disoriented, dehydrated. The hospital treated you for mild malnutrition and what they thought was exposure, but they didn't test for drugs. This was 1997, Chen pointed out. Protocols were different. A confused child found on the street. They probably assumed abandonment or runaways, not kidnapping and drugging. Can we test for that now? Stephen asked. Hair samples, anything. After 28 years, Martinez shook her head. Any evidence would be long gone. Our best bet is tracking down whoever Natalie hired, following the money trail. They talked for another hour, going over details, establishing timelines, building a case. By the time the detectives left, promising to be in touch, Valerie felt wrung out. I should get back to work, she said, standing up. Stephen caught her arm. Take the rest of the day off. Hell, take the rest of the week. You've earned it. I need to do something normal, something that makes sense. Valerie? He stood up, took both her hands. You don't have to prove anything anymore. Not to me, not to anyone. You're my daughter. That's not going to change whether you work a shift or take time to process what's happened. The words broke something loose in her chest. She'd spent her entire life trying to prove she deserved to exist, to belong, to matter. And here was someone, her father, telling her she didn't have to prove anything at all. I don't know how to do that, she admitted. Not prove myself, I mean. I've been doing it so long, I don't know how to stop. Then we'll figure it out together. He pulled her into another hug. I've got 28 years of parenting to catch up on, starting with teaching you that you're enough exactly as you are. Valerie laughed through her tears. That's pretty advanced parenting. Most people start with teaching their kids to tie their shoes. Well, you already know how to do that, so we're ahead of schedule. They stood there in his office, her father's office, and Valerie felt something shift inside her. The constant anxiety, the need to perform, to be perfect, to earn her place in the world. It didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip just a little. A knock on the door interrupted the moment. Patricia stuck her head in. Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Whitaker, but the hospital administrator is here with some reporters. They're asking about the situation with Mrs. Crawford. Stephen's expression hardened. Tell them I'll make a statement later, and Patricia, start calling me Stephen. I think we're past formalities. Patricia grinned. You got it, boss. She looked at Valerie. And you, welcome to the family, officially. After she left, Stephen turned to Valerie. The media is going to be brutal. They'll want interviews, photos, the whole story. Are you ready for that? I don't think I have a choice. You always have a choice. We could keep this quiet, handle it internally. A woman orchestrated the kidnapping of a child to maintain her corporate power, Valerie said. That's not something that should stay quiet. Other people deserve to know. Other families who lost children deserve to know that people like Natalie exist. You sound like your mother. Stephen's voice went soft. Marianne always said sunshine was the best disinfectant. That truth had a duty to be told. Tell me about her, Valerie said. Please, I have fragments, but I want to know everything. Stephen walked to his bookshelf and pulled down a photo album she hadn't noticed before. I kept this in my office. Couldn't look at it for years without falling apart, but I couldn't put it away either. He opened it to the first page. A young woman with dark hair and bright eyes smiled at the camera, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. This was 3 months before you were born. She was so excited. We'd been trying for years, and when it finally happened, she said it felt like a miracle. He turned the page. And then you arrived, and she swore you were proof that miracles were real. Page after page of memories. Marianne holding a newborn Valerie. First steps, first birthday, a family trip to the zoo, Christmas mornings. Ordinary moments that made up an extraordinary life. She loved sunflowers, Stephen said. Started growing them in the garden the summer before you were born. Said they were like little pieces of the sun she could keep with her even on cloudy days. That's why she gave you the necklace. She wanted you to carry sunshine wherever you went. Valerie touched the pendant. I did, even when I didn't remember why. I always loved sunflowers. I'd draw them in school, plant them in the orphanage garden. Everyone thought it was just a quirk, but it was her. It was always her. She would be so proud of you, Stephen said. The woman you've become. Strong, compassionate. Brave enough to fight for the truth even when everyone told you you were wrong. I wish I could remember her better. Really remember her. Not just fragments. We'll build new memories, Different ones, but just as real. He closed the album. And I'll tell you every story I can remember, every joke she told, every song she sang, every way she loved you. You'll know her, Valerie, I promise. They spent the next hour looking through albums, Stephen narrating each photo, bringing Marianne back to life through stories. Valerie learned that her mother had been a teacher, that she'd had a terrible singing voice but sang anyway, that she'd made the best chocolate chip cookies in the neighborhood and always burned the first batch. She sounds wonderful, Valerie said. She was, and she loved you more than anything in the world. Stephen touched a photo of Marianne reading to a tiny Valerie. Losing you destroyed her. She tried to be strong, tried to keep going, but the grief was too much. Her heart literally couldn't take it. I'm sorry I couldn't come back sooner. That wasn't your fault. None of this was your fault. He closed the album and looked at her directly. Natalie Crawford stole 28 years from us. From you, from me, from Marianne. But she doesn't get to steal anymore. We're family now. And nothing, not time, not distance, not even death, changes that. Valerie nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Outside the office, they could hear the hospital coming alive with rumors and speculation. Tomorrow, the news would break publicly. The scandal would explode across headlines. Natalie Crawford would face justice. But in this moment, in this office, surrounded by photographs and memories and the fragile hope of a future they'd both thought was impossible, Valerie and Stephen started the long process of becoming a family again. The story broke on every major news network within 24 hours. Hospital administrator accused in 28-year-old kidnapping conspiracy. DNA test reunites father and daughter after decades apart missing girl case. Solved. Power, greed, and a stolen childhood. Valerie stopped watching after the third interview where talking heads debated whether Natalie Crawford was a monster or just extremely ambitious. As if there was a meaningful distinction. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, distant relatives she'd never met, even a producer from a true crime podcast wanting exclusive rights to her story. She turned it off and left it in a drawer. Stephen did the same. For 3 days, they hid in his house in Evanston. Ordering takeout and avoiding the news cameras camped outside, they spent hours talking, filling in the gaps of 28 years. Stephen showed her more photo albums, told her stories about her grandparents, explained family traditions she'd missed. Valerie told him about the orphanage, the good parts and the hard parts, about the foster families who'd almost adopted her but changed their minds, about the loneliness that never quite went away, even when she was surrounded by people. I always felt like I was waiting for something, she said on the third night. Sitting in the living room with mugs of hot chocolate neither of them was drinking. Like my real life hadn't started yet. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. I felt the same way. Like I was frozen in August 1997, and everything since then was just existing, not living. And now, Stephen looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Now I feel like I can breathe again. On the fourth day, Detective Martinez called. Natalie Crawford had been formally charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, fraud, and a list of other crimes that would likely keep her in prison for the rest of her life. Margaret Donovan had accepted immunity in exchange for her testimony. She'd given them names. The lawyer who delivered Valerie to the orphanage had actually been a private investigator Natalie had hired. They'd tracked him down in Florida, where he was now facing his own charges. The investigator is cooperating, Martinez explained over speakerphone. He says Mrs. Crawford paid him $50,000 to take Valerie from Springfield to Milwaukee and arrange for the orphanage placement. He was told the family didn't want her anymore due to divorce proceedings. That's a lie, Stephen said, his voice hard. We know. He claims he didn't know it was a kidnapping, that he believed Ms. Crawford's story, but the DA thinks that's garbage. He knew what he was doing. How did he get to Valerie in the first place? Valerie asked. The news reports said I disappeared from a park. According to his statement, Ms. Crawford told him exactly where you'd be and when. She'd been tracking your family's routines for weeks. The day you disappeared, she'd arranged for your regular babysitter to be sick. The backup sitter she'd recommended was actually the investigator's girlfriend. Valerie felt sick. So Natalie planned the whole thing. down to the last detail. She waited until your mother took you to the park, then had the fake babysitter approach and say your mother had sent her to pick you up. You went willingly because this woman knew your name, knew your mother's name, seemed legitimate, and nobody saw anything suspicious. It was 28 years ago, and it looked like a normal childcare handoff. By the time anyone realized you were missing, they were already 3 hours away. Stephen's face had gone gray. All this because she wanted to control the hospital. According to the investigator, Ms. Crawford told him the family situation was toxic, and that removing the child was for everyone's benefit. She seemed to genuinely believe she was doing a good thing. That's what makes her particularly dangerous. She convinced herself her actions were justified. After Martinez hung up, Stephen stood and walked to the window, staring out at the news van still parked on his street. "I trusted her," he said quietly. "For 28 years, I trusted the woman who destroyed my family." Valerie joined him at the window. "She manipulated you. That's not the same as you failing, isn't it? What kind of father doesn't notice when someone sabotages his own child's rescue? A father who was drowning in grief. A father who was just trying to survive." She touched his arm. "You can't blame yourself for being human. Your mother would have seen through her. Maybe Natalie would have found a different way to manipulate her. Predators are good at finding weaknesses." Valerie turned him to face her. "The only person responsible for what happened is Natalie Crawford. Not you. Not Mom. Just her." Stephen pulled her into a hug. "When did you get so wise? I had 28 years to think about blame and responsibility. Trust me, I've worked through this already." That evening, Stephen made an announcement. He was stepping down as hospital director. Not permanently, but for 6 months. He needed time to heal, to be with his daughter, to rebuild a life that had been on hold for too long. The board understood. They were still dealing with the fallout from Natalie's arrest anyway. An interim director was appointed, and Stephen's leave was approved unanimously. "What will you do?" Valerie asked. "Whatever you want to do. Travel, stay here, move somewhere completely new. I have 28 years of fatherhood to make up for. Your call." Valerie thought about it. She'd spent her whole life being shuffled from place to place, never putting down roots because she knew they'd just be torn up again. But now, "I want to stay," she said. "I want to work at the hospital. I want to build a life here, with you, in the city where I was supposed to grow up." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I've been running from my past my whole life without even knowing it. Time to stop running." 2 weeks later, they held a memorial service for Marianne. It wasn't a funeral. She'd been buried years ago, but Stephen wanted to honor her properly, with Valerie there. They held it in the hospital's memorial garden, the same garden where Marianne's ashes had been scattered. Stephen had planted sunflowers there every spring for the past 26 years. Now they bloomed in golden profusion, their faces turned toward the sun. Friends came, colleagues from the hospital, old neighbors, people who'd known Marianne and loved her. They shared stories, cried together, celebrated a life cut too short. Patricia spoke about how Marianne had volunteered in the pediatric ward, reading to sick children. An old neighbor remembered her terrible singing and infectious laugh. Stephen's college roommate told embarrassing stories that made everyone laugh through their tears. And then Valerie spoke. "I didn't get to know my mother," she said, standing before the gathered crowd. "But I carry her with me anyway, in the sunflowers I've always loved, in the kindness she taught me without my even knowing, in the way my father loves me, because that kind of love has to come from somewhere." She touched the necklace at her throat. "Someone tried to steal my mother from me, tried to erase her from my life completely, but they failed, because love doesn't disappear just because you can't remember it. It stays in your bones, in your blood, in who you become. My mother loved me, and that love shaped me, even when I didn't know where it came from." She looked at Stephen, saw him crying openly. "I'm grateful for the years I had with her, even if I can't remember them clearly. I'm grateful she gave me life, gave me love, gave me a father who never stopped searching. And I'm grateful that, even though she's gone, I can still know her through the people who loved her, and through the legacy she left behind." Valerie knelt and placed a bouquet of sunflowers at the base of Marianne's memorial plaque. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. I promise I'll make you proud." After the service, As the sun set over the garden, Stephen and Valerie stood together among the sunflowers. "She would have loved the woman you became," Stephen said. "I wish she could have seen it. Maybe she can. I like to think she's been watching over you this whole time, keeping you safe when I couldn't." Valerie leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you think you can forgive yourself for not finding me sooner? I don't know, but I'm going to try. For you, and for Marianne, and for the years we have left. That's all any of us can do. Try." They stood there as the light faded and the first stars appeared overhead. The news crews had finally left. The hospital scandal would fade eventually. Natalie Crawford would face justice. But here, in this garden filled with sunflowers, surrounded by the memory of a woman who'd loved fiercely and lost everything, a father and daughter began the slow work of forgiveness, of themselves, of the past, of the time they'd never get back. Tomorrow they'd start building new memories. Tomorrow they'd figure out how to be a family. But tonight, they simply stood together, two people who'd been lost and were finally found, learning that healing doesn't erase the scars. It just makes them part of the story. 6 months later, on a September afternoon when the air finally held the first hint of autumn, Valerie stood in the hospital garden watching Stephen plant sunflowers. It was the anniversary of Marianne's death, 26 years since she'd passed, leaving behind a husband and a ghost of a daughter. Neither of them knew would someday find each other again. "You're doing it wrong," Valerie said, kneeling beside him. "You have to loosen the roots first, or they won't take." Stephen laughed, his hands dirt-covered, his hair falling into his eyes. He looked younger than he had 6 months ago. Lighter. "When did you become the gardening expert?" "YouTube. I had a lot of free time during your leave of absence. My leave of absence that you insisted on, because you needed it." Valerie took the sunflower seedling from him and gently worked the roots loose before setting it in the hole. And I was right. She had been. The 6 months away from the hospital had transformed Stephen. He'd gone to therapy, processed decades of buried grief, learned to sleep without nightmares. He'd also learned to cook, badly, but with enthusiasm, and discovered he actually enjoyed hiking. Most importantly, he'd learned how to be her father. Not the father of a 5-year-old child, which is what he'd lost, but the father of a 28-year-old woman who'd raised herself and didn't need protecting so much as she needed partnership. It had been awkward at first, both of them learning the steps to a dance they'd missed the lessons for, but they'd figured it out together. "The board wants me back full-time next month," Stephen said, patting soil around the sunflower. "But I told them I'm only coming back at 75%. I'm not making the same mistake twice. Work isn't worth missing life for." "Good, because I signed us up for a cooking class every Thursday evening. We're going to learn to make something other than burnt scrambled eggs and ordering pizza." "Sounds perfect." They worked in companionable silence. Planting the rest of the sunflowers, the garden had become their sanctuary over the past months. A place where Marianne's memory lived in golden petals and green leaves, where past and present could coexist peacefully. When they finished, Valerie sat back on her heels and surveyed their work. She would have liked this, wouldn't she? Us being here together. She would have loved it. You were her whole world, Valerie. Losing you. Stephen's voice caught. I think part of her knew she'd never see you again. That's what made it unbearable. I wish I could have saved her that pain. You couldn't have. You were a child. The only person responsible for her death is the same person responsible for everything else. Natalie Crawford. Natalie's trial had concluded 2 weeks ago. Guilty on all counts. 40 years to life. She'd maintained throughout that she'd been trying to help. That Stephen had been destroying the hospital with his grief. That removing the trigger, meaning Valerie, had been a necessary business decision. The jury had deliberated for less than 3 hours. Valerie had attended every day of the trial. She'd needed to look Natalie in the eyes, to understand how someone could rationalize stealing a child and calling it mercy. But even after hearing all the testimony, all the justifications, she still didn't understand. Some people were just broken in ways that couldn't be fixed. Have you thought about what the prosecutor asked? Stephen said, pulling off his gardening gloves. About the victim impact statement. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Valerie had been asked to speak at Natalie's sentencing hearing, to tell the court how the crime had affected her life. She'd been hesitant at first. What good would it do? But then she'd realized it wasn't for Natalie. It was for everyone else. For the other families, the other stolen children, the other lives destroyed by people who thought they knew better. Want me to come with you? I need to do this alone, but thank you. They cleaned up the gardening tools and walked back toward the hospital. Stephen had officially returned to work 2 weeks ago, and Valerie had taken a position in pediatrics. Working with children felt right, like honoring the child she'd been who'd never gotten to grow up where she belonged. The hospital looked different now. The board had implemented sweeping reforms after Natalie's arrest. New oversight committees, transparent financial reporting, term limits for administrative positions. They'd even renamed the main conference room after Marianne. A small gesture, but one that meant everything to Stephen. "Dr. Whitaker," a nurse waved from the entrance. "Your 3 o'clock is here early." Stephen checked his watch. "That's my meeting with the Marianne Whitaker Foundation Board. Want to sit in?" The foundation had been Valerie's idea, a nonprofit dedicated to helping families of missing children, funding DNA databases, and supporting reform of adoption and foster care systems. They'd launched it 3 months ago with a substantial donation from the settlement the hospital had paid to make the lawsuit go away. "Can't," Valerie said. "I've got a shift in 20 minutes, but I'll see you for dinner." "Absolutely." "And Valerie," Stephen pulled her into a quick hug. "I'm proud of you. Your mother would be too." Valerie blinked back sudden tears, 6 months in, and those words still hit her like a gift every time. "I love you, Dad. Love you too, little star." She watched him disappear into the hospital. This man who'd searched for her for 28 years and never given up hope. Then she headed to the pediatric ward, where small patients with big fears needed someone to hold their hand. That evening, after her shift, Valerie returned to the garden alone. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet that made the sunflowers glow like they were lit from within. She knelt beside Marianne's memorial plaque and placed a fresh sunflower there, as she did every week. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I know you can't hear me, or maybe you can. I don't know how this works, but I wanted to tell you about my day." She talked for a while, about her patients and her father and the life they were building together, about the cooking class disasters and Stephen's newfound love of hiking, about how she'd finally found an apartment she liked, but spent most nights at the house in Evanston anyway, because it felt like home. "I'm happy," she said finally. "I know that probably sounds strange after everything that happened, but I am. I have a father who loves me. I have a job I care about. I have a name that means something beyond just surviving." She touched the sunflower necklace, which she wore every day now. "Someone tried to erase me, tried to make me disappear so completely that even I didn't know who I was. But they failed, Mom, because you loved me enough that even when I couldn't remember you, I carried you with me, in the sunflowers, in the way I care for people, in the way I never gave up believing I belonged somewhere." A breeze rustled through the garden, warm and gentle, carrying the sweet scent of flowers and earth. "I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to help other families find their way back to each other. I'm going to take all this pain and turn it into something good. That's what you would have done. Isn't it?" Valerie stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. The hospital rose behind her, its windows glowing warm in the gathering dusk. Somewhere inside, her father was finishing his meeting, probably running late like he always did, probably thinking about what to make for dinner, even though they'd end up ordering takeout again. Tomorrow, she'd give her victim impact statement. She'd face Natalie Crawford one last time and tell her story. Not for revenge, but for healing, for closure, for all the other Valeries who were still lost and searching. But tonight, she was exactly where she was supposed to be, in a garden full of sunflowers, surrounded by love that had transcended time and distance and even death. The past didn't hurt anymore. The stolen years would never come back, and that was a loss she'd carry forever. But she'd also carry this, the knowledge that she was loved, that she'd always been loved, that even in the darkest times, when she'd felt most alone, her father had been searching for her, and her mother had been watching over her. She was Valerie Whitaker, daughter, nurse, survivor. She was home as Valerie walked back toward the hospital. The last rays of sunlight caught the golden pendant at her throat, making it shine like a small piece of the sun she carried with her always. In the garden, the sunflowers swayed in the evening breeze, their faces turned toward the fading light, holding on to sunshine even as darkness fell. Beautiful, resilient, eternal, just like the love that brought a lost daughter home, just like the destiny that could be stolen but never destroyed, just like the truth that always, eventually, finds its way back to light. The end word count, approximately 1,240 words. Epilogue note: the story of Valerie and Stephen Whitaker sparked national reforms in missing children databases and foster care oversight. The Marianne Whitaker Foundation has helped reunite over 200 families with missing children through advanced DNA matching and investigative support. Natalie Crawford is serving her sentence at a maximum security facility. She has never expressed remorse. Margaret Donovan passed away peacefully in 2026, having testified at multiple trials about corrupt adoption practices. Stephen Whitaker continues to direct St. Raphael Hospital, now with his daughter working beside him. Every spring, they plant sunflowers together in Marianne's garden. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can transform into something beautiful, into wisdom, compassion, and the fierce determination to ensure no other family suffers the same loss. The sunflowers still bloom in Chicago, and somewhere, a mother's love continues to shine.